convince the world that the high power, high money art of the 80s time, she's a dealer, she's a gallery owner, is over, and we can now look at art for the sake of what it means intrinsically to the values of the human spirit, and also how it might change our outlook on economic values of art. So she put, I don't know how many artists in the show, but quite a few, but she tried to put in artists who were working in more modest materials and also with smaller ideas or big ideas in small ways for the values show. It's in Julie Le Kaplan at 93 Crosby, at 252 Broadway, the Miramisha Gallery at Lafayette, or Bowery, next to the garden. I don't know what that address is. It's a very small number, like 8 or something, next to the garden. And 1 or 2 other spaces. I think it's in the gallery behind. Then, beyond that, at Christmas vacation, I'm typing up the journals from the last 2 years because I'm working on this book that I mentioned before, Soul and Psyche. And some of the journals will be in that. That's like a book after Homo Futurus, which was also a kind of journal book from 82 to 84, with pages pasted in. Then I'm working on a second novel. My first novel was with my literary agent. He's Gunther Stolman. He's editor of a nice news journal, and he's interested in books that are involving the interior psyche and the exterior world in some way. So he's finding the book a little bit hard to place, but that's not typical for my work. I find even my videotapes hard to play. And I think I mentioned, or was about to mention earlier, that I get strange letters from venues of video, like Los Angeles Center for Contemporary Exhibitions held on to fingernails for over 2 years, and then finally wrote me this long letter of apology that everyone in the place saw the tapes, they loved the tapes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they waited for someone else or more than one artist to match me with for some type of group show, and there was no one that they could make a category out of. So they, with great overtures of apology, they sent the tapes back to me, and I just, checked it. Oh, okay, I have this rejection file. I put it in the rejection file. But it's very odd. These things happen. They happen a lot. I think that you need, for some reason, at least during the 80s, to categorize work by curators, or for curators to establish a theme coincidental with their agenda, and then ask artists to produce tapes to illustrate the theme, or to send in tapes that already illustrate the theme. Has been extremely common. So I'm hoping, for my work and for other people who think they're working in original ways and almost deliberately and adamantly rejecting any type of categorization, that maybe this is the time. This show is part of a series called In Your Face. It's curated by Dale Hoyt here at the Kitchen. He's not here today. But it's especially made for artists who have a serious commitment to the medium of video, but who are either brand new to the medium and have not had very much exposure, or have been working for a long time and have not had very much exposure. So they call it emerging or underexposed artists. So when he spoke to me about it, he spoke to me from the perspective of underexposed. Okay, as far as ideas, do you have a question?
Well, I do, but if you're finished sentence.
No, well, there was like 2 parts. There's 2 parts to this question. One is ideas for the future, and then also internal ideas in these pieces. So I can wait for the second. Come on.
Well, I've been sitting here listening to you, and I'm like, so I don't know how to formulate this question, but interior psyche, exterior world. What It seems like that's what art is.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but you're labeling your stuff as particularly being that. I mean, you know, how is it, how do you see it being different from what other people do? Maybe that's the question.
Well, I think that people are dealing more directly with the subjects that they're encountering. And I think that I'm dealing more obliquely with them.
Like, for example, a simple example, what would be direct dealing versus indirect?
I think that a direct dealing with the issue of, for example, this victimization is part of the same. Both directly by people who are talking about being directly victimized, a woman cut up in a suitcase, and packed in a suitcase, or a concentration camp victim, or someone who's the victim of an industrial accident, which were the early phases, have for me moved into a type of symbolic expression of victimization, like the tossing of the newspaper, or the anger of victimization by throwing the Glock at the blackboard, or the setting up the knee, which just happens to be a Jewish starred Chinese checkerboard, and then pieces roll off and we hasten to put them away. That's an indirect. I mean, beginning with direct and then to indirect. And I think that many artists in video today are dealing with the situation more directly. They're scripting narratives about victimization, or they're depicting gay rights being trampled on. It's more obviously political, or I think I'm more surrealistically. Any other questions to darken the room?
Where do you think the meaning lies in what you're doing? Does it lie in you, or in the medium, or in the work itself, or in us, or in me, or in everybody individually?
That's certainly one of the investigations of the tapes. That they are obviously to you, and because of me, produced for the sense of meaning, that there is going to be meaning here. That this is not a visual image. This is not for visual pleasure. This is for the transference of meaning. The final meaning is in the ideal. In the ideal, if ideal, when, and in the occurrences of ideal in this experience, my meaning and your understanding are on one electrical connection. And for me, the ideal is somewhat represented by the concept of God, which has come into these tapes a few times. I do not subscribe to the notion of some type of superior being, out there commanding all kinds of things. I do think that in each individual, for each circumstance, for everything that they do and think, there's an ideal form for that thought and an ideal form for that existence. And biologically, the ideal form is the form that actually exists, because it's the result of the genetic process and the environmental process and the historical process on both the individual that survives and the species as a whole. And when we think about art here as you said, the vehicle for the transmission of these thoughts, the thoughts are very fluid. I'm trying to find the symbols that convey my psyche in a contemporary social situation, and you are as raw, you, the mass of dark viewers, are as raw a genetic, socio-ethnic genetic blob as I am, trying to absorb through this other medium. Like we're sort of both sucking this straw, kind of, or I'm, giving out into the straw, and you're getting it you're getting it in, but if your inputs don't match my outputs, or to the degree that your inputs match my outputs, we will find the same denominator. But to the degree that they differ, particularly if either of us hold a structured position on any of the issues that are raised, there will not be the full communication. I think that communication is as much a responsibility and a pleasure, a privilege, whatever, a reception of the viewer as it is the artist. And there's this, time in black space where I try to entrance myself to produce the work at all the stages, at the stages of shooting, at the stages of editing, at the stages of combining, and even now at the stages of communicating in another medium, in a physical body medium, a corporal medium. Some of the same thoughts and the philosophy behind the thought. So it's as much the responsibility of the viewer to remain an open sheet to receive the messages as it is for me, the artist, to produce the messages.
But certainly communicating doesn't, you may send a message and I may get a really strong message, but it may not be what you thought I was going to get or what you want me to get. Right? It's still communication even if I don't get your idea.
Yeah. Yeah. The ant farm piece, the ants are all identically genetic. They're all females, all workers, and they communicate by touching their viewers to each other, and they had common needs. They had to bury the dead. They were burying the dead in the ant farm during the course of that piece, while the thugs from the mining company were playing a trick on the miners having their Christmas party. And I think that piece is speaking directly to this issue, the idea of how closely communication can occur between individuals and how far apart communication can occur. I'm concerned with that constantly.
For future ideas.
For more video, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, there's a piece in progress called, I had technical problems because I changed the title, because when I edited in the new title, it glitched and all kinds of things happened. But it's called either Clothes and Books, or My Whole Wardrobe, or My Books. That was the original title, but then I kept referring to it, to myself, to Clothes and Books. So then I tried to change the title or electronically to Clothes and Books, and burned out the first couple images. That is a piece that's still in progress, although it was shown in progress here at the kitchen when Dan Minahan curated a show called something like the Electronic Diary or something like that. It's a long piece. It's 20 minutes. It's one piece, and in very, very, very quick, short cuts, I appear in all of the clothing that I've collected. God, I don't know. I got into college in 1966, so I mostly kept most of my clothes. So from 1966 to when I shot the tape, which was around '88, I wear all of the different variations of all of the clothing that I've kept. Two soundtracks. One is, I think, the Goldberg variations or something like that, and then a kind of countdown sort of sound. And then the second half of the tape, then suddenly, abruptly, as I take this kind of bow, it's very quick takes. I'm standing straight in front or beginning to walk across the screen or something like that, and then it involves all my different underwear and stuff like that. Then suddenly, the second section of the tape shifts to covers for when in the case where the covers are ripped off, the title page of all the books that I've collected, which pretty much at the same time. I guess I started collecting books in high school, but mostly they came in '66 in college. And the titles show up, and then there's 2 soundtracks, 3 really, coming on over the left and right speakers. There are different tracks, and then over the left and right speakers together, there's a simultaneous track. The simultaneous track is Bill Creston, who's taping this discussion now, right in the back of this very minute, is reading out loud from the synopsis of Categories from Roget's Thesaurus. So it's all of the words in the language in some order, but the synopsis of the categories, so the order is very condensed. You understand the order. And then from the left and right channels, I'm reading as an overlap selections from some of the books that appear on the screen. And the books that appear on the screen are Thomas Mann books, and Thomas Wolfe books, and Cox books, and books that I'm sure everyone in the room has read. And that's one of the ways I'm trying to make a connection to the viewer and express the idea of the individual and the group, the single psyche, the single individual, the single look in the clothing, which is of course similar, I'm sure, to clothing that all the rest of you have too. There's lots of different kinds of jeans and other kinds of hippie type clothing from the 60s and all kinds of stuff. And then the books being the common, everything we've read, which makes us similar philosophically, and then the reminder of the things we read in the organizations and the language. I'm trying to work through communication through language a lot, and how language both communicates and miscommunicates.
Your pieces seem to be of 2 sorts, the ones you showed anyway. Shorter ones are not involved in nonverbal communication, and the longer ones would seem to were the ones that involved verbal communication and also had more narrative involved in them, which explicitly communicated some sort of violence. And do you think that, or are you trying to get it, that in verbal communication and narrative, there is necessarily some sort of violence going on? You talked about victimization and miscommunication and all this.
First, let me say that I always, in any medium that I'm working with, produce the work and then analyze it later. I do not set up a message and then figure out how to illustrate it to communicate it. I communicate this from a very deep place and then do an analysis of it like everyone else. Some of the books on the table are actually analyses of some of the earlier books on the table. So the question or the presumption of violence, which I believe is true, began to actually become a conscious reality to me fairly recently with the editing of the last piece, which I've been editing now, although I've just finished it in time for this show. I guess I've been editing it slowly over 2.5 years. By last spring, it was an hour. There were several more sections. Some of these sections were longer and other things. I think that I'm very pessimistic. I think that my true feeling about how people treat each other is like we treat each other like shit. And I think that that certain groups in society get treated more like shit than other groups. I think that artists are tremendously shit to other groups, except of course the ones that manage to get out, and then those are the heroes. And I think that that there's this vibe when you're in a like a market where you're willing to work for free, where you'll do anything to get your best work out. You're not going to compromise what you do. You don't care if you get paid. You don't care if anything. there are both egoistic and economic slurs made against the psyche of this individual, including the idea of no matter what, they'll do it anyway. You know, I mean, that is the big myth of the artist. You can do whatever you want, you know, they'll do it anyway. And I don't know if it's true or not, and maybe it is, but I think that the violence is both a reaction to the climate of all human beings against each other, I think, are behaving violently, and then in this smaller circle, the situation of the art.
How do you define miscommunication? Is it an intentional misleading? How do you?
Oh, no. Although I think that is certainly an interesting avenue to pursue, and in one of my novels, there's a character that becomes quite corrupt, and there is an intentional misleading there. I haven't really explored that idea of miscommunication. Normally, I mean it from the perspective of the person who is to receive the information, either blocking it or it not matching the fund of information already present or something, but it's just sort of sliding on. When miscommunication occurs from the person attempting the communication, it's usually a kind of accident and futility, the honesty of the communication being there, but the reception for the communication not there. For example, in the case like Candace's grandmother, where she was hit on the head with the grapefruit juice, and she's trying to say, hey, I was hit on the head with the grapefruit juice, and the people receiving the information says, mentally incompetent.